I guess you didn't see all the technical issues that was happening in the background. I was doing some scrambling. Let me tell you, I was some other channels had popped up. I don't know what was happening, but things were askew, as they say. So we've got Richard from Nightscape Images. He's in the back, and I just want to welcome him and thanking him for spending some time with us today. And we're going to talk about Nightscape, long exposure images, and he's got workshops in Australia that he does. So we'll talk about that. But let me kind of introduce you to Richard. He just makes the complex of night photography simple. And that's what I really enjoy about watching his channel and his videos is from, taking something that's really complex. And night photography is a complex issue to photograph and to work with, but he makes it simple. So let me just give you a little intro, and then we'll get talking with Richard right away. Okay, Richard, welcome.
Hello,
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Okay, no, everything's good. We're on. I was doing, as I was saying, I was doing some scrambling. I had some technical issues in the background, and it was kind of going on 2 channels, and it was just, I don't know what happens, but as we were talking earlier, live, you never know what's going to happen. So you just have to be kind of prepared. But welcome. Thank you for joining us all the way from Australia. It's a miracle, this electronics and how the world works nowadays.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. But it's good to be here. And here in Australia, the sun is shining outside. It's a beautiful day. And I'm not sure what the weather's like over your part of the world.
Well, actually, today the sun is out. It has been a little cool over the last little while. We've had some rain, we've had snow, we've had everything, in the last little bit. So it's nice to see some sunshine, and hopefully the warmer weather is going to be coming in soon. But yeah. So Richard, what I wanted to kind of see our viewers, just to ask you some questions about your photography. Now, how long have you been in photography, especially the ASTRO?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll keep it short. I started photography when I was a very young teenager, probably about 12, maybe even 12 years old or something like that. And my interest in the night sky and the stars was back then as well. And I can remember trying to take pictures of the night sky with my mum's old box brownie camera, and it was not very successful because it was an old camera even then. But that my passion's always been there, and probably in more recent years, let's just say the last eight to 10 years, where technology and equipment has caught up with my vision and passion for what I wanted to do. That's where it really began. But I've been doing photography as a profession, either part-time or full-time, for probably 25 years now. And so I've done wedding photography, I've done portrait photography, I've done lots of events, and various styles of photography, and also video production. I've done that also for about the same time. But more recently, probably the last 6 or 7 years, I've really jumped into nightscape photography. And in fact, that's pretty much all I do now.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned I run workshops. Well, I've been doing that for about that time. And, as you get a bit older, you sort of tend to hone in on what you enjoy doing and what you love doing and what your passion is, rather than what you sort of feel like you have to do. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, like I say, we always, as in the photography, we always kind of wonder what kind of gear the person uses, what kind of filters and lenses. So what kind of camera bodies do you photograph with?
Yeah, okay. Well, I've always been a Nikon shooter. And that's only because I pretty much started with that brand of camera many years ago. I have used a lot of different camera brands over the years, especially in video cameras and things. I've used Sony cameras, I've used Canon, Panasonic, but these days I'm using, well, actually my video, what I use now for my video is actually a Sony camera, an A7S III, which is what I'm actually using right now
Yeah.
to film this. And the reason I use that camera for video is because of its extreme low light capabilities. And so I'm using that system. But for my photographs, I'm using the Nikon system,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm using pretty much prime lenses, 20 mil, 35, 50. I've also got 14, 15 mil, 14, 24, f2.8, fast aperture lenses. The Z6 series is what I'm using currently,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. I absolutely love that camera. Comparing it to the Sony camera, which I've also got, I prefer using the Nikon system, but the Sony is better for video and it's better in low light. So that's why I've got those two systems.
Yeah, yeah, no, it. I mean, I have the Z6 also, and I enjoy it. I've kind of looked up some of the specs for it, and it is a great camera for Astro.
Yep.
From what I see from people using it, they all seem to love the Z6, and
Yep.
so it's nice to see it. Now, in terms of when you're out photographing, which is your favorite lens to use? Like you'll grab that. If you're going to go for a lens, you're going to grab that most of the time.
Yep. Yeah, the 20 millimeter f1.8.
Okay, yeah, and yeah. So, and why do you like it so much?
Well, I think it's a good compromise between an ultra wide angle lens and a little bit longer focal length. So it's sort of halfway between a 14 mil and a 24 mil. Now, the average person, when they start getting into nightscape or astrophotography, they immediately go ultra wide. So 14 millimeter. A lot of people use the Samyang Rokinon system lenses. I've had those and I don't like them, but their quality control is not great, and that's why I don't like them.
Yeah, yeah.
So the 20 mil is a little bit longer lens, so therefore I can get a little bit more detail in my shots. Also, there's a little less wide angle distortion, but probably the main factor is the quality of that lens is just absolutely wonderful. It's a native Nikon lens,
Hmm.
so it is a beautiful lens.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, you mentioned the same thing, and I found the same. As you know, I just started shooting nighttime photos, and I have that 20 millimeter, and I was telling my friend about that it is such a great lens. I mean, it's tack sharp from corner to corner, which
Yep.
usually in a wide angle you don't get that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a fantastic lens, and also the prime lenses typically are fairly lightweight. One of the things that I've worked out over the years is camera gear has gotten generally a little bit smaller and more compact, but some of the lenses are still massive and they're still very heavy. And I prefer to, especially at nighttime when you're walking around, you don't want to be carrying too much weight in your pack. And so these newer generation mirrorless lenses are a bit lighter weight, and I like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because I mean, as you know, I'm a wildlife photographer, and I used to carry my 600 millimeter lens with my D4 on there. The tripod was carbon fiber, but still, it's like 100 pounds on your shoulder.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I'm downsizing to my Fuji X100 and the Nikon Z6, and we have another fellow, Chuck, that I was talking with him there. He got the Z7, so he's just going to be going out. I think he's going on a fishing trip, and he's going to give it a shot and doing some astro with that. So hopefully he'll come back and give us a report on that. Now, in terms of gadgets, what kind of gadgets do you have when you go out for your nighttime? Do you have any kind of things that you got to have when you're going out?
yeah. Look, I've got more. I take everything out with me except the kitchen sink. I've got everything, and I don't carry it all in my backpack. But in the car, I've got plenty of lights, heaps and heaps of lights. I think that's important because I'm doing night photography. I need to be able to firstly, I need to be able to see where I'm going. I need to be able to, and also I'm recording video at night time as well,
Mm-hmm.
so I need lights for that. And the other thing is light painting. I do a lot of light painting, so I need lights to do that. So I have all sorts of different. I've got flashlights. I've got light panels. I've got LED, all sorts of things, different brands. That's one of the good things now. There's so much out there that's available that is low cost and works really well. So I've got lots of different brands. If you look at my YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of videos about the gear that I have. I tend to take maybe two or three lenses at the most. I don't usually have a whole heap of lenses with me because I don't do a lot of changing. Although I do have more than one camera. I've got three Z6 cameras, so sometimes I'll do a time lapse. With the time lapse, I tend to use wide angle lenses, but then you need extra tripods. I've also got things like time lapse sliders and all sorts of motion control equipment. So I use that. That's a lot of stuff to carry in the car.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, I've got lens warmers. Some of those cold, frosty nights, the lens will fog up, so I need to keep that
Now,
warm.
is that
So it's just a little band, a lens warmer. It's a thing that you wrap around the lens and connect into a battery,
mm-hmm.
and it actually keeps the lens from fogging up. So I have heaps of those.
Yeah.
And yeah, just bits and pieces. So lots of extra batteries. As you know, being in Canada, you know that the batteries don't last so well in the cold
No.
weather.
No.
But that's one thing I like about the Z6 cameras and the Z7 or any of the Z series. The battery life's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's better than the Sony camera
Yeah.
battery.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can tell
No,
you that.
and the Fuji's also. I mean, like I say, I've been a Nikon shooter all my life too, and I was an NPS member for Nikon. So with my D4, when we used to go to Yellowstone, and it's minus 20, minus 30 degrees, and I could have my battery in that camera, and it would last for 3-4 days, and would have no problem. I wouldn't need charging with it, and we'd be out in the cold with it. So Nikon's got a pretty good reputation with batteries, which is nice to hear. So now in
Yeah.
terms of software, what do you use to do processing for your image? What kind of software do you use for that?
Well, there's a fair few options out there, but I'm still with the Adobe suite, so I use Lightroom and Photoshop. I'm editing. I use a Windows machine to do my editing. So I use those two mainly, but I also use a program called Sequator, which is a stacking program. And if anyone's using a Mac, you'd use Starry Landscape Stacker, which
Yeah.
does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's handy. It's a very good program. The Sequator program is actually free. You can just download it for nothing. And there's the odd little plug-in that I use in Photoshop, like Topaz Denoise is good, and a few things like that. But I don't use a lot of there's other software out there, like On One and Capture One and things like that. But I haven't personally used any of those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, because I know there's so much out there, so it's like especially for somebody getting in, it's hard for them to kind of, okay, this is what I need. You hear one person say this is it, somebody says something else, and all of a sudden you just get kind of muddled, and you don't know what to do and what
Yeah.
equipment one should
Yeah.
have.
And it's
So
the same. That's what it's like across the board. People will say, "Well, what camera do I need to do this?" Well, the reality is, there's a whole stack of cameras from different brands that you can use, and they're all very good.
hmm now, Richard, for somebody just starting out, a basic setup for Nightscape, what would you say to them? What should they go out and get?
Well, it depends. It all depends on budget. Now, in the most forms of photography, any camera is fine. And you'll hear people talk about this all the time. They'll say it's not about the gear; it's about how you use the gear.
That's right.
But there's a big but when it comes to nightscape photography, because you're pushing your camera gear to the absolute limit, and so therefore you need a camera that is operates well at high ISO and with long shutter speeds as far as noise control is concerned. So that typically narrows it down to the best ones are full frame cameras with not too high a megapixel count, and you know, probably anything made in the last 5 or 6 years is fine. There's DSLRs or mirrorless cameras; they're all good. Now there are some really good cameras also in the crop sensor range. For example, the Fuji X-T3, for example, is a great camera. But you really need to have good fast aperture lenses. It helps an enormous amount to get a good signal to noise ratio when it comes to capturing in the field.
Yeah.
So, but any of the introductory mirrorless cameras are good. So we talked about the Nikon, the Z6, the Z5, Z7. They're all good. Canon, the R6 Canon is a new model. It's probably not the cheapest camera around, but the R5 is more expensive. They're both excellent cameras, but a lot of people are using the Canon R series, which is a mirrorless. Before that, Canon 5D Mark IV, excellent camera. Canon 6D, awesome camera. Any of the Sony A7 series cameras are fantastic. Also, the Nikon D750, D850, D800, D810, they're all excellent cameras.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I had so many cameras here. I lost count on some of them, but I love the D850. That's still one of my favorite cameras. Now the Z6 is coming. Like, what's happening is as we're getting older, and as we talked about earlier, these cameras are heavy. So to be going out photographing and packing around, it's a lot of blasted weight. So everybody from my age group now, I'm seeing them. They're kind of going down to the mirrorless, getting smaller cameras. Because those do really fantastic images. So
yeah, it's interesting you say that because I talk at a lot of camera clubs and I talk to a lot of people with different gear, and a lot of people, particularly women, and I understand because they go for Olympus cameras, for example, because Olympus cameras are small, they're very powerful little camera, and they're an excellent camera for landscape or whatever you want to do. They got fully feature packed.
yeah,
The only problem with them is they've got a micro four thirds sensor, which is very small in comparison to, say, even a crop APS-C crop or a full frame camera. So that's why they have a little bit harder time capturing the night stuff, because you're pushing the ISO right up. You're really pushing that sensor to its limit, which brings me to what I said before about how the camera gear, to an extent, for nightscape photography does matter.
yeah,
So the larger sensor sizes do make a difference to the ability to capture. Now, I know you can stack multiple images together, which helps with the noise reduction, and it does help a lot. So you can use any camera, and I've done a lot of experimenting with just kit cameras and kit lenses and everything, but it does make a difference if you just increase the quality of the lens and get a faster aperture, say an f1.8 lens as opposed to an f3.5 kit lens or an f4. It makes a big difference.
yeah. I know. As you mentioned, we talked earlier about Samyang lenses. I've always, I've been a Nikon guy as you are, and I've always had Nikon lenses. I believe that they are top quality. They, instead of, having a Nikon and putting a different brand of lens on there, I don't think it's always the best idea. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
Well, I think it comes down to the lens. Now, there's some third-party lens manufacturers now that are making some very good lenses. For example, the Sigma Art Series lenses are very good. Also, I've got a few, and I have used a few Tamron lenses, and a lot of their lenses are very good. Now, but when it comes down to it, the main reason people use those lenses is because they're cheaper to buy. They're not as expensive. Now, if you had the money to spend, you would buy a genuine name brand lens for a Canon, Sony, Nikon, excuse me, whatever, because they're made to match the camera. They're a top quality product. But I will say that a lot of those other brands are quite good. So Tokina, Sigma, Tamron, they do make some good lenses. I've had a little bit of issue with some of the Korean, for example, Samyang, Rokinon, and Chinese. I've got a Laowa 15mm f2 lens, which has its pluses, but the image quality is just not anywhere near as good as the Nikon lenses, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think the mirrorless, the Z series lenses. I believe they're even getting better than what the older Nikon lenses are. And they're lighter too. So, but
Yep, I agree. Yep.
I'm impressed with them. So, but okay. So now let's go on to. I'm going to just close this window and move on to the next one. We're going to talk about some of your fantastic images, and so we're gonna start with this one, Richard. And what
Yep.
can you tell us about this?
Well,
And
this is an image that probably should not have happened because it's a junky old car stuck in a heap of thorns and prickle bushes under a tree, and you would not give it a second thought normally.
mhm,
I saw it as a bit of a challenge, and so I went there one during the daytime to have a look at it. Realised, oh gee, there's not much, there's not much of any great quality in this. It's rusted out and everything else. But the reality is, and this is a concept that I've had in mind for many years, is that one of my challenges is to make the ugly things, the normal, average, ugly subject, come alive and become a thing of beauty. And
yeah,
so that's what I've attempted to do here, and simply by putting light on it. So photography is all about light, and when at night time, even more so because you need to add light somehow to make a photograph happen. And in this case, you can see the Milky Way galaxy there in the background. You can see the light on the car. Now I've lit that from different angles. So this is a multi-shot blended image.
mhm,
It's shot with a 14 millimeter focal length lens, so I'm very close up to
yeah,
that car, and they'll put a light inside to give it that orange glow. You can see the beautiful reflection on that tree limb across the
mhm,
top there. So trying to frame the subject. So it's probably it just comes out of my philosophy of trying to make something out of nothing.
mhm. And you actually worked out really well because that the Milky Way is just kind of framed with the car and that tree branch. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yep.
framed in there. Now, for the viewers out there, how long would have this image taken you to photograph?
Well, I can't remember exactly, but let's just say there's about 6 or 7 images blended to create this, and each one of those images would be about 15 to 20 second shutter speeds. So that's not very long. This is focus stacked. So in other words, I've focused on the background to take that at infinity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just a single exposure on the background. And then I've refocused onto the car, stopped down the lens. So the background would be shot at f2.8. It was shot with a 14 millimeter f2.8 lens. So
Yeah.
the background's f2.8. I think about a 20 second shutter speed at about ISO 3200, just from memory.
Uh huh.
And the foreground is shot at probably about f4 or f5, probably still about a 15 or 20 second shutter speed, but a much lower ISO, probably about maybe 800.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I've just added light in a light painting sense to create the exposure,
Mm-hmm.
and moved around on different angles to give it more character. So the whole point of light painting is to create shape and to create shadows and highlights on the image. And when you blend them all together, you get an image that looks like this.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible image that you take. Now, again, as like you say, you get this car, and during the daytime, you wouldn't even give it a second look. But for night photography, this type of image is just incredible. It just people
Yeah.
are looking for these to try to find them. To take these shots.
Yeah,
So
well, what happens is people ask me all the time, how do you find these things? Well, the reality is that there's a lot of things out there that we can shoot. We walk past or we drive past, we don't even take a second look. And it's not just cars or whatever, but there's other things like trees,
mm-hmm.
or even buildings, or mountains, or some shape in nature that you can look at and say rocks, or rivers or creeks or whatever. There's always something there, but
Yeah.
we have to have the ability in our mind to see an image, and this is where it's something that's an intangible, but you have to be able to see an image before you take the image, at least a concept in your mind's eye, because if you can do that, then you're halfway there. Then it comes down to the technical know-how of how to actually technically take the image. But the first thing that has to be in your mind is the vision of the shot.
Yeah, and folks, that's like what you were saying, the technical. So, I mean, it's like a recipe. When you look at something like this, you do. I'm going to do the lighting here. I'm going to, get the background's going to be in focus. You kind of
Yeah.
look at the foreground. So it's a recipe putting it all together to come up with one image. And if you ever get a chance, go see Richard in Australia if you're down there for some night photography workshops and just learn a little bit of his secrets to all this. Now let's go and hey, got another incredible image. You sent me some incredible images here, Richard. So here's another one. Tell us a story about this one.
Yeah, well, this is a very simple image, really. It's a single exposure. So this is taken at 35 millimeter focal length. And that's me. That's doing what I do a lot of, and that is just standing there in the middle of the night gazing up at the night sky. I spend a lot of time doing that, but
Yeah.
this was taken very early in a morning, quite a few years ago now. It's an old image, and that's the rising Milky Way galactic core there at the time. And there's a couple of planets in the frame. It's Venus there, that bright star there low down. You can see that's the constellation of Scorpius there. And there's also in the top left-hand corner a little tiny meteor, which I loved the fact that I captured that. I didn't know I was capturing that when it happened, but it's there in the frame and it looks really quite good. And there's a little bit of light pollution on the horizon, which sort of just gives it a little bit of color, that little orange bit of color. So the bluish sky, it's a white balance setting in the camera, so it was probably a lower Kelvin number to get that bluer color, but it's very simple, just a single shot. It's probably about a 10-second shutter speed, shot on a 35 mm f1.8. I think it's probably at about f2.2, I would think.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it. Very low camera angle.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it is a really cool image, and like you say, with that shooting in the top corner there, and that's what I noticed. I mean, I went out for the first time where it was kind of dark, and I came home and I brought my photos up into Lightroom, and I'm going, I didn't see this plane coming across, or I didn't see this happening in the sky.
Yeah.
Although I'm looking at it, but it doesn't show up. But with a 10-second or a 20-second exposure, that appears. So
that's right. That's right. And at the moment, there are so many satellites up there. There's thousands of satellites have been added in the past few years, and so it's very rare to come away from a night shooting without any satellites in the shot.
Yeah, and I guess that's just like Elon Musk's satellite, the Starlinks out there. To see them. I mean, the first time I saw them, I'm going, boy, we're being invaded by somebody from outer space. I see these things streaking across the sky. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And here's Karen from just around the corner from us. She says, "Welcome, Richard."
Hello, Karen.
And she's an incredible photographer, also. It's nice for her to join us here. But yeah, I really do like this image that with you in there, and it's simple, but it's a powerful shot.
Yeah. I do like. I take a lot of selfies, and it's not because I'm a vain person. It's because, well, two reasons. One, because there's often no one else around there. I've got to take a picture of myself if I want to put person in the frame. Yeah. But two, it helps me remember scenes like this.
Yeah.
And I have quite a few pictures with myself in the frame because it takes me back there. When I look at the image, I think, oh, I remember that day when I stood there looking at the stars, or I remember that day when I was in the middle of an aurora or something else that was happening, and that's why I do it. It just helps me to reminisce, and they're good memories.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, and let's have another one here. We got this one here is another incredible shot here. So looks like there's lots of anger in this one.
Well, it's quite interesting because that is a single exposure. Now what happened was, I went out to this tree which I'd located, and I thought I wanted to capture the Milky Way galactic core behind the tree. But what happened? The clouds rolled in and it became cloudy.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm just about ready to go home because the clouds were going nowhere. And the moon rose. And this is a moonrise. It's late at night, probably midnight or
Mm.
so. So it's a crescent moon. It's after a full moon,
Yeah.
and and I had this beautiful view of the moonrise with the moon illuminating underneath the clouds, just the same as a sunrise would do. And so I thought, well, I'll take the picture, and it came out far better than I even thought. This is a single exposure, shot with a 35mm f1.4 lens, but it's shot at f4.
Mm-hmm.
So I've stopped down the aperture a little
Yeah.
bit. The lighting is simply from the moon, and also the lighting on the tree you can see there is from a passing car. So this was off into a paddock, a field, probably about, I don't know, 40 meters from the road. So there's the odd car was passing by, and it lit up the top of the tree, and it gives it that really mysterious, eerie look. But I love I love that look, and I actually took this picture a few nights later without the clouds, with the Milky Way there. But I
Yeah.
still prefer this
This
image.
is better. Yeah. 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 No, it is a it's very very well done. With everything just kind of fell together for you on this. But that's the problem. With the night photography is you can go out, you can do all the planning you need to get your shot, and you get out there and clouds.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
even that you can plan for a kind of a night where it says it's not cloudy, but the clouds will come in. So. Um,
yeah. It happens. It happens to all of us, and there's nothing we can do. We've just got to uh, wait for another night.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, So okay, and then yeah, Karen was saying here. Let me just bring this up here. Backlight is stunning, thanks to the passing
Yeah,
car. Yeah, yeah. No, and those always kind of help. So
yeah, and sometimes the random things like that happen. I've got a number of videos where I talk about these things, and if anyone's interested, I have a YouTube channel just under Nightscape Images, and that's what you'll find on my channel. And I talk about a lot of these images there, and how my mindset is, and what I'm looking for. But there are obviously occasions where random things happen, and you just have to run with it. And
yeah,
this was one of those occasions.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a cool old tractor and in the field there, and these are the things that there's an area in southeast Washington that a lot of the photographers from Canada, and actually it's probably one of the most popular places in the United States for photography. It's got all rolling hills and old farm buildings and barns, and there's old equipment and old rotten old trees like you have in there. So we haven't
Yep.
had a chance to go down and do any sort of nighttime, but it's mostly for the day. People go down there at the daytime with all the green rolling. So it'd be kind of cool to see that Milky Way pop up like that. For
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah. This is taken with a 35mm focal length lens. So when the Milky Way is close to the ground, like in this case, you can use longer focal length lenses and still capture it in the frame. And I like to use longer focal length lenses if possible.
mm-hmm.
So 35, 50, even 85, which is hard, but
Yeah,
I have taken the odd picture with 85. But this is 35mm, so it gives you what there's a couple of things it does. Firstly, it draws everything a bit closer,
mm-hmm.
so that Milky Way becomes bigger in the frame. Secondly, there's less distortion with wide angle as compared to wider angle lenses, and I don't like distortion in images. I like
Yeah,
things to be straight when they're meant to be
yeah,
straight. And in this case, this old tractor. Now, what happened was I was driving along one day, and way over in the middle of a paddock somewhere, I saw this thing, and I thought, "Oh, is that a tractor?" It was probably 200 meters away, 300 meters, a
yeah,
long way away. And I stopped the car, walked over a little bit. Yep, that's a tractor. Now I tried to find out who owned the paddock, the property,
yeah,
so I'd ask their permission to go in, and because at night time sometimes you run the risk of people thinking you're there stealing something or
yeah,
vandalizing
yeah,
something,
yeah.
because they might see the lights shining around and things like that. So anyway, it took me a long time to find the owner of this property, but eventually I did. And I said it was an old lady. Her husband had died. Um, she was living by herself, but nowhere near this particular location. She lived
Mm.
probably 20 or 30 miles away. But anyway, I said to her, look, I'll tell you what, I'll take a photo of this tractor and I'll print one out for you and give you a copy. And she said, oh, thank you. That'd be nice. So I did that. And I rang her up and I said, look, I've got that image for you. Can I drop it into your house? I said, I drove all the way over there. And she said, oh, thank you. That would be nice. So I met her. She was about 87 years old. Her husband had died, and she told me that that was her husband's favourite tractor.
Wow.
And it blew up, and it's now in the paddock. It's probably never going to move from that paddock. The
Yeah.
engine is blown up. But she put on a cup of tea for me and had some cookies and biscuits and all sorts of things there. And I knocked on the door, and she said, oh, thank you for coming. Nobody ever visits me. And I thought, man, oh man, I've
Yeah.
met this lady who owned the tractor and the paddock in the field, and it's just amazing what you find out about people. And so, the fact that it was her husband's favourite
Yeah.
tractor
It's a great
made me
memory.
feel really good about the fact that I'd gone the extra mile to try and find out who owned the vehicle.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's and like I said, it's a great memory for her. Especially when it was her husband's favorite. And that's a
Yeah,
beautiful image. And it's something that she probably wouldn't see that. Like a night shot like that of that
yeah,
tractor. It's something very different for her. So
yeah,
it's
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah. And that's the thing about photography is like I mean you share and you give away images and for people that they really appreciate this sort of photography
Yeah,
and gifts that they get. It's so very cool. That's a great shot. So let's see what we got on the next one here. And here we got this one here with a little trike.
yes, that's right. Well, this is a special image. This is a single exposure, just one single shot. Um, but it's shot with a 35mm lens again, and deliberately focused onto the trike. So that what that's done is I've opened the lens right open to about f1.4, might be f1.8, I can't remember, but so that's throwing the stars out of focus because I've got a bokeh sort of look, but that's deliberate. So it's more of an artistic image, this one, and the light source is just a light underneath. It's on a ridge, so I was able to get down behind the trike, shine a light up onto it, and just give it. There was a little bit of fog in the air. It was a very cold night, and you can see that the ambient atmosphere is glowing a little bit because of the light on it.
Yeah,
But the other thing that you'll notice here is that there's a whole heap of spider webs all over this tricycle. Now, I couldn't see any of those when I was there
yeah,
because they just didn't show up to me. But this is a I think a 10-second shutter speed, Sigma 35mm f1.4 lens on a Nikon D750. Um, Pretty high ISO, probably about 3200 ISO, and yeah, that's what you get. Just one single exposure.
yeah. No, that like I say, it's and it's pretty cool. Like I mean, and that's the thing. Our eyes do not always see what the camera does. The camera can, you take this image and all of a sudden you see those little speckles and the highlights in the background, and you see the cobwebs on there, and
Yep.
and everything again came together on this one. Especially it's a one shot
Yeah.
photo here. So it's yeah, it's cool to see all these old toys that kids used to play with. And now they're becoming art.
Yeah.
For us photographers. So
Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right.
uh, another great shot. And Karen was saying, can you give the EXIF info on some of these? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
so
will.
which you are
Yep.
doing. So thanks. Yeah. And here's another one. It just all these old wrecks and you wonder, Richard, like how in the world did this thing end up here? You know?
Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting. Very interesting, actually. There's a story behind this one, and this is the interesting thing. There's a story behind every one of my photographs because they don't just happen very easily. So what happened was I found another old vehicle in a remote location once. Not this particular shot, but another one, And I found the owner and said, "Look, do you mind if I take photos?" He said, "Yes, no problem." So anyway, he said to me after a little while, he said, "Look, um, do you want to take a photo of another one?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do." He said, "Well," I was at his house at the time, and he said, "Okay, jump in the ute." He's a farmer, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
jump in the ute in the car. I don't know if you call them utes over there, but
yeah.
pick up if you like. And off we went, and it went through about 3 or 4 fences and locked gates and all sorts of things. And he said, "Have a look at this," and he showed me this. But at the time when he showed it to me, it was on its side in a ditch. So it was in a, and the ditch is actually down to the left of this image. You can't see it in this
Yeah.
frame. And he said to me, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "Oh, it's fantastic. I just wish it was up on the side of the hill." And he said, "Oh, I've got a tractor. I'll pull it out for you." So he did. And it was not easy to get out because it's a hill. It's quite a steep terrain. Anyway, he pulled it out and put it there for me, and it was lined up beautifully with that Milky Way. Over here in the southern hemisphere, you get the Milky Way laying flat like that late in the year, in about September, October.
Hmm.
And so I went back and shot this. Now this is quite a complex image because it's a light painted layered image. So there's probably about 5 or 6 images for the foreground, only one for the background. So it's focus stacked. I've used a 20mm f1.8 lens on a Nikon D750. It's shot, the background shot at f 2.8, ISO 6400 for 15 or 20 seconds. I just can't quite remember the
Yeah.
exposure time, but it's about that. The foreground, I've stopped down to f5, refocused onto the truck to make sure it's sharp and clear. F5, ISO 500 for 15 seconds, and I've shot those 5 or 6 images lit from different angles, and then I've just simply blended them all together in Photoshop. And this is what I call my fine art light painting method. So what I'm doing is, rather than taking a single exposure, I couldn't get the amount of detail in a single exposure. And the reason for that is because to capture the Milky Way, I need an wide open aperture, and I need long shutter speeds
Yeah.
and high ISO. But to
Yeah.
capture the foreground, I don't need that. The foreground's not moving. And I might add, the reason I need the high ISO and the uh, wide open apertures is because the sky is constantly moving. It's due to the rotation of the Earth. So the
Hmm.
stars are moving. So I can't leave my shutter open too long, otherwise I'll get streaks in the sky. And you would have seen star trail images. That's what they are. They're just extra long exposure images. So that we're limited with our shutter speed essentially for the sky, but we're not limited in any of those ways for the foreground. I can have that shutter speed as long as I want. I can have the aperture anywhere I want, and I can put the ISO as low as I want. All I need to do is add the correct amount of light to
Hmm.
make it look good. And so that's what I've done. Quite a few of these images will have been shot with that same method.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing. And I've done some light painting too. And the other day I was out trying to get just the right amount of light. It takes a number of shots because sometimes
Yep.
you give it, it's too much, then it's not enough, and to get that
Yep.
right amount it's a trial and error that you kind of have to go through. And I mean, you can
Yep.
kind of play a little bit in Lightroom and kind of dodge and burn if you need to, if you're close. But yeah, it's again, these things are, things that turn into art. These old
Yep.
vehicles and
Well,
and
one of the things, Frank, is that when we're shooting, for example, if we're shooting single exposures and we're trying to light paint, we're shooting with a high ISO, then we're it's very easy to clip the highlights, and so your dynamic range is affected.
yeah.
But when you stop down the aperture, lower your ISO down, you've got a much greater dynamic range to work with. So you can put more light on without blowing out the highlights. You get better blacks. You don't get that grey sort of muddy blacks that you do with the high ISO images. So that's one of the other reasons that I use this method to do a lot of my light painting.
Hmm. Well, that's what I was saying to another friend of mine. I think Wayne's in the audience here too. That um, what I found with just watching some of the YouTube for astrophotographers is they are masters at knowing how to reduce the noise in images, and how to set up shots like what you've done here. You guys are masters at doing this. Us photographers in the daytime, we just go out, we set this, bang, click, it's done. But
Yeah.
to do something like this, it's like you've got a real talent in doing
Well,
that. And I wish you were here in Canada to put the workshops on.
well, it comes with a price though, Frank. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of practice and a lot of images that don't work.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
you work through these things, but it's just a matter of persistence. Now, one of the things with daytime landscape photography, you are essentially at the mercy of the elements. In other words, if there's no light, then your photo is not very good. You tend to be able to only shoot sunrise, sunset to get the right light that you're looking for. Whereas what I'm doing here is actually adding the light that I want to make the image into what it could be. Now, there's all sorts of variants on that, but that's what I've done in this particular case.
Yeah, yeah. No, as Karen says, you're an engineer.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
Okay. So let's see what next image we got here. And here's another
Yeah,
one. Beautiful Milky Way
yeah,
shots. Now,
yeah.
question one here, Richard. Do you do planning for these shots? Like, is there any apps that you look at for the Milky Way, where it's going to be at certain times, or you just go out and kind of hope that's there?
No, well, I can tell you that if you go out and hope for the best, you generally end up with the worst. No, there are lots of apps around, and after a while, you just sort of get a knowledge of where things are. But yes, I do a lot of planning, and this is nowhere near where I live. So this was a road trip I was on a couple of years ago down at a place called the Great Ocean Road. So this is on the ocean, and as you can see, it's a place called Childers Cove. Beautiful, beautiful area, and absolutely black as the ace of spades. It was really dark here on this particular night. Although looking at this image, you would think, oh, there's plenty of light. But I've added nothing to this image. There's no light painting, no nothing. It's just all ambient light captured using long exposure techniques. So you can use apps like Photo Pills, which will help you work out where the Milky Way is in a particular part of the sky at any time.
Hmm.
There's a few others as well. But the reality is, I tend to use a desktop program called Stellarium, which is absolutely fantastic. It's basically a planetarium software, but it tells you where any part of the night sky is in any part of the world at any time of the night. So it's
Yeah,
fantastic. It tells you where the moon is, what sunrise, sunset, all of these different things.
yeah.
But on this particular occasion, I was on a road trip. I went there during the day, scoped the location, worked out that the Milky Way would be over the top of those heads there um, during the night. And all I needed then was clear sky. Now, this is quite a complex image, both in capture and in process, because it's a panorama. So it's
Hmm.
it's two panoramic images combined. So I took one of the sky and one of the foreground.
Okay.
And the reason I did that was because I needed extra long exposures to get enough light into that foreground. So the sky is I don't know, I can't remember, but let's just say about 15 images, panoramic images at f2.8, ISO 6400
Hmm.
at 15-second shutter speeds. That's what the sky is.
Yeah.
But the foreground is 60-second shutter speed, so it's a minute long shutter speeds, ISO 3200, and they're still at f2.8. So there's a lot more going on in that uh, the exposure in the bottom half
Yeah.
of the image than there is in the top half. And then all I've done is combined the two together. I've processed them into panoramas separately and
Hmm.
then combined them in Photoshop um, and just brought out the details. And as I said, no light painting at all. The only light there was a little bit of light pollution you can see on the horizon there, but not much else. It was really, really dark. I've got a video on my channel about this particular trip, and this particular photograph features in that. But yeah, so I've done quite a bit of that extra long exposure foregrounds. Now, a lot of people will do blue hour blends, or they'll do shots in dusk or something like that
Yeah.
for the foreground and blend that with the sky. Well, this is not that. This is
Yeah.
taken in the middle of the night where it's absolutely pitch black.
Well, I think the other thing is the way you do it here is everything matches up. Like, it's you're even though you've put multiple images together, the colors are all taken at the same time frame. It was a night shot rather than
Yeah.
blue hour, taken and trying to kind of get the color and everything to match it. It's quite difficult. It just so much nicer looking, to
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is a panoramic image. So this is the technique is exactly the same as you would take a daytime
mhm.
panoramic image. The only thing that's changed with this one is the fact that I had to blend the sky separately to the foreground. But they're both taken at exactly the same time, same tripod position, same location, same everything.
Mhm.
Just using two different techniques to get the light right.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, it is very 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 cool. I love that. Yeah, I think out of all of these, this is one of my favorite ones of your photo here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is this is a very highly technical image. So I'll try and run you through how I
Oh,
produced this one. I also have a video on this, so you can look back in my videos and you'll find this one as well. But this is a focal length blend. So what I did, I shot the foreground at 20 millimeter focal length on the Nikon Z 6,
mm-hmm.
20 mil f1.8 lens, and the sky is shot at 50 millimeter. So I've used the Nikon 50 millimeter f1.8 lens for that one. Now, the sky on this that's Orion the Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the southern hemisphere, it appears upside down to what you guys see it in the north there. But this is shot on a star tracker. So a star tracker is a device that follows the movement of the stars across the sky, and so you point your camera to that star, and then you can extend the shutter speed to whatever you want to get a longer, a better exposure. And to get those fine details of the dust clouds and the nebulosity in the sky, the star tracker is the way to go. So, but obviously, when that's happening, because the camera's moving, anything that's in the foreground will blur because the camera's actually moving, and it's a long period of time. And in fact, that background is a combination of 10 2-minute exposures.
Okay.
So I've taken 10 shots, one after the other, at 2 minutes shutter speed each. And they're shot at f2.8 at ISO 800.
Okay.
So you can see by using the longer shutter speed on the tracker, I can lower my ISO down and get a sharper, cleaner image. But then there's a lot of post-processing to get those details to come out. So anyway, that's a stack of 10 images.
Yeah.
So I've used software to stack those 10 together. Then what I've done, I've taken the foreground image with my 20 millimeter lens. That's my standard light painting method. So that's shot at f5, ISO 500, or it might have been f5.6. I can't remember exactly, but thereabouts at ISO 500 for 15-second shutter speeds. And then I've just blended the two together. Now, it used to be very difficult to blend backgrounds into foregrounds for this type of shot, especially with trees and objects in the foreground. But there's a number of things built into Photoshop now that makes that an easier process, and I'm very pleased with this image. It's beautiful. It takes me to this place, and I think about this image, and I think, man, it adds a bit more art and creativity and magic to the image. You couldn't possibly shoot this in a single exposure. Well, obviously because it's two different focal lengths, but you just couldn't get the detail.
Yeah, because that 50 millimeter for the background, actually compresses it towards the house here, so it brings that sky a little closer. It's almost like right above it, even though it's miles away from there. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you did some light painting on the outside of the house here too.
Yeah, I did, and the inside as well. Okay. There's a light inside the house. It's an old abandoned house. There's no one lives there, obviously, but I've done a lot of light painting. So there's probably about 6 or 7 or 8 frames there of the foreground. And what I'll do when I'm walking around the house, I will do sections at a time. So one image on the sides, and I'll never ever light from the direction of the camera. It's always off to the side, so you get the shape and the character and the shadows, because the shadows are a big part of the image.
Oh, absolutely.
If you look at the image, there's a lot of highlights, but there's also a lot of shadows, and that's deliberate. Even on that water tank at the back there on the left-hand side, I've lit that from both sides, as you can see.
Yeah, no, it's just it's like I say, it's a beautiful image in there. So and like you say, you get the dust in there from the nebulas, and it's just very just a great image. Okay, and here, is this you standing here?
Yeah, yeah, that's me. So last year I went on a road trip to Tasmania. Tasmania is the island state of Australia, southernmost state. So it's further south than any of the other parts of Australia. And down here in the southern hemisphere, the auroras happen in the south.
Oh, okay.
And this was a massive aurora that happened at this lake when I just happened to be there. I didn't plan for it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't go there to capture aurora. I went there to capture the Milky Way and the stars over this lake. And it came out, it was massive, and I couldn't believe it. I don't see auroras where I live very much.
Mm-hmm.
So this was fantastic. So I stood there. I took a number of images, but this one is one that I'm very, very pleased to have captured, and one that I've got blown up as a big print on my wall here at home. It just takes me back there every time I look at
Yeah,
this. So this
yeah.
is a single exposure. So it's taken with the 20 millimeter f1.8 lens on the Z6 camera. Um, it's about, now you're gonna be shocked by this, but it's shot at f2.2, I think, f2.2, at ISO 3200, and it's an 8-second shutter speed.
Yeah. Wow.
8 seconds.
Yeah.
And the
Now,
reason I shot 8 seconds was because the beams that you see in auroras are moving.
yeah,
They're
constantly.
sort of
Yeah.
shimmering across
Yeah.
the sky.
Yeah.
And so the shorter shutter speed freezes that movement a little bit better. Now, I
Yeah.
could have shot it at 15 seconds, but it would, in fact, it was so bright that it would start to blow
Yeah.
out at
Yeah.
15 seconds.
It
So I
might have been
lowered
a bit blurry.
the shutter speed down to
Yeah.
about eight
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah, we get northern lights here too in Canada, but it's just to see something this close to it, like you feel like you're right under it, with this image. So
Yeah,
it's
it
pretty
does.
cool.
Well, I'm sure you get, especially in northern parts of Canada and Alaska, you
Yeah,
get some absolutely brilliant
yeah.
northern lights. But for me, this was a big deal, and yeah, an absolutely fantastic night. Once again, I've got another video on this very night. I've got
Hmm.
a number of playlists on my channel, on my YouTube channel. This is the Tasmanian road trip from 2021, and you'll
Yeah,
see, if you look at that, you'll see this video about this trip.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've got your Nightscape images up in front for people to click on and to follow it, to have a look. And here's another one. It looks like a little cellar with the Milky
Yeah,
Way
well,
over
it's
top.
actually a boathouse. So this
Oh,
is
is
on
it?
the edge of the water.
Oh,
This is also in Tasmania. So I took this on the same trip last year when I was there. Uh, so you can't see in this image, but the sea or the water is just down here on the bottom right hand of the image. And
hmm,
so this is an old boathouse, and they store their boats in there. It was recently restored. It was in a pretty bad state of disrepair, and they've fixed it up, put a new roof on. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place to take an image. Very dark sky location,
yeah.
and the Milky Way over the top there is a tracked image. So I had
Okay.
my star tracker there. It's a tracked image, so that's very vibrant, very strong.
Yeah.
Again, longer shutter speeds enabled, 2-minute shutter speeds for that. And then I blended it in with the foreground here, which is light painted using the same methods I showed you before. So this is all shot with the Nikon Z6 camera, 20mm f1.8 lens. Um, the foreground is shot at f5.6 at uh, about 15-second shutter speeds at ISO 500, or it might have been 800. That's roughly the range I use
Hmm. Hmm.
typically when I'm light painting these foregrounds, and that's just blended with the sky image, which is shot at f2.8. 2-minute shutter speeds and ISO 800.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Richard, do you use any filters on like when you're doing the sky like that for 2 minutes? Because if you're using the higher ISO, the lower f-stops there, to get 2 minute shutter, it's quite tough to
Well,
get.
yeah. No, well, firstly, no, I don't use any filters. Secondly, that's why I lowered the ISO. So that sky is shot at ISO 800.
Okay.
But you will find if you're in heavily light polluted skies, then you can't shoot that long. You'll just blow out everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is a very dark sky location, which helps dramatically with that. But no, I don't use filters of any sort. There are a few filters out there, like light pollution filters. There are also filters that enhance bright stars and make them
Yeah.
glow, star
Yeah.
glow filters, they call them.
Yeah.
I tend not to use any of those.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, light pollution is a problem. If you push your exposures too much, it will glow too much.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And here's another, something on the paddock, as you would say, a farm
Yeah,
implement.
that's right.
An old
So
plow.
so now this is an interesting picture because it's a single frame from a time lapse that I was shooting.
Oh.
So I shot a time lapse on a time lapse slider, so it was moving across, and the green color of the sky was genuine. It was literally green that
Mm-hmm.
night. It was absolutely fantastic. And this is a single shot from a time lapse. So it's shot with a Nikon Z6 camera with a Laowa 15mm f2 lens. It's at f2.8. It's a 15-second shutter speed at ISO 6400. And you can see that there's a bit of low level lighting. So I've got one light set up on the left
Yeah.
and one light set up on the right, sort of cross lighting this old plow. Because it's a time lapse, I can't individually light each frame, so that they have to be set up for all of the shots. And I shot about, I think from memory, about 1,200 images in this time lapse. It was a lot of shots,
Yeah.
and they're all exactly the same exposure, and they're just one after the other. And you see the time lapse when it's finished and edited out, it just moves. The camera's moving, the stars are moving. There's all sorts of things happening. And one of the things I like, you can see at the front wheel of this plow, there's a meteor, a little streak of light going through the sky. That's a meteor in the sky, and I like that. You can also see this beautiful air glow in the sky. That's not clouds. That is known as air glow, and it's a natural phenomenon. And it's these streaky, I don't know what you call it,
Yeah. Yeah. It is a
textures
cool
across the
shot.
sky.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah. I mean, I looked when I first looked at it, going, it's quite green, but like you say, that's what the color was, and
yeah.
yeah, no, so you, now the other question is when you're out there, and I guess you want to maximize the time you're there. Are you using, say you've set up a time lapse for this? Are you doing something else for a sky for another shot?
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
maximizing
So,
your time.
yeah, so I've got more than one camera. So if I'm setting up a time lapse, well, it depends what's going on. But if I'm setting up a time lapse, I'll tend to leave that alone, and then go and do something else somewhere else, just to maximize the time, because it took about 4 hours to shoot those 1,200 frames. So,
Hmm.
I'm
Do
not going to
something
sit
in
in the
between.
car
Yeah.
and wait for 4 hours and look at this the sky. I've got to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me just. Here's another one. You've got lots of old brick houses.
Yeah, well, this is a very recent image. So I did a recent road trip out to the state of South Australia, which is another large state in Australia,
Hmm.
to the west of where I live. And this is an old stone brick building. It's called the Bondley Hall. So it must have been an old dance hall or something. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell from this picture, but it is quite big. Now, this is the foreground is once again using the standard light painting method I demonstrated to you before. So it's shot at f5.6. There's about 6 exposures there, just lit from different angles. F5.6, I think they're 10-second shutter speeds from memory
Hmm.
at ISO 800 on this one. Now, when it comes to the shutter speed, when you're light painting, the shutter speed is somewhat irrelevant, because I'm not trying to capture the sky in the same image. The sky is a separate exposure. And in this case, that is a single exposure, that sky, shot on a star tracker. So I shot that at f2.8 on the 20mm focal length lens, f2.8, 60 seconds. So it's a 1-minute exposure
Wow.
at ISO 1600.
Hmm.
So you can see my settings change depending on what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because it's on a star tracker, I can extend the shutter speed. So that's where the 60 seconds comes from,
Hmm.
because it's following the stars across. And then I just blend the sky in with the foreground.
Yeah.
A blend like this is quite simple. There's no trees. It's a pretty simple one, but it has to still look right, and it has to look natural. It has to look real, and it is real because that's what I was there when I took the picture. But you'll often see a lot of pictures that are blended, and the blend doesn't look. It looks unnatural. Or it looks like there's something wrong with the image, and that is half the battle of getting the editing in these Nightscape images. Is probably the most difficult part of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, like if you've taken the sky in this, and if you could pop it into another image somewhere else,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the lighting would be off from it. No matter how hard you try to kind of balance them out, I don't think it would work. Like
yeah, yeah.
this seems
Well,
natural.
that's right. It takes a lot of time and energy to get, because, as I said to you before, the sky color does change
Mm-hmm.
from location to location. Sometimes you'll get all that air glow. Other times you'll have might be light pollution, or who knows. There's lots of reasons why the sky changes.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, another fantastic image. And we're getting down to the last few images, but this one's
Yeah,
another cool one here too. The
yeah.
lone
This
tree
is
with the
beautiful.
Milky
I
Way.
love this image. This is shot at 50 millimeter focal length, and that's why the Milky Way looks so big.
Wow.
It's 50 millimeters.
Yeah.
So the tree is also at 50 mil. That's a single frame, just a silhouette. Nothing complicated about the tree. It's very
Mm-hmm.
simple. But the sky is the same method I mentioned before. It's tracked on a star tracker,
Mm-hmm.
10 shots at 2 minute shutter speeds at ISO 800 at f2.8.
Yeah.
And so, because I shot 10, the reason I shot 10 is to stack them for noise reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a common practice in people who shoot the night sky is to stack images, because it improves your signal to noise ratio. You'll get much cleaner images. You can push them a bit harder in processing, and you end up with something like this, which is just magical.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to include the actual really simple silhouetted tree in the foreground to draw your eye. Well, it does draw your eye to the tree, but it really uh, makes the sky look just so powerful and
Mm-hmm.
strong and
Mm-hmm.
vibrant.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible shot. I mean, your eye goes to the tree, and then it just kind of follows the Milky Way up.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
that 50 millimeter lens is a pretty cool lens to shoot some of this stuff. So I can see you
yeah,
using that quite often. So yeah.
yeah. Like I said before, I love using the longer focal lengths because you can see how powerful that image
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's only 50 millimeters. I mean, but for a landscape photograph, 50 millimeters is not common.
Yeah.
Most people shoot wider than
Yeah.
that, or perhaps longer than that if they're looking for something way off in the distance. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's what I like to shoot if I can, and it helps having the background subject, in this case the Milky Way galactic core, quite low to the ground. It makes it easier to capture that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's yeah, it's very cool. And here's another
Yeah. So
movie.
this is another opportunistic moment. Now this is a single exposure shot on a. This is I shot this many years ago. So this is shot with a Nikon D610 camera.
Wow.
So that's a camera I used to have years ago.
Yeah.
It's shot with a Samyang 24mm f1.4 lens. Okay, so the lens is not great,
Yeah.
but it's what I had at that particular moment, and it's I think it's shot at about f 3.5 or thereabouts. And the reason for that is it was a really cold, foggy night, and I rolled up to this old deserted church. It's an old building, another old building, and I thought this could be a good photo. But then, just as I was setting up, a truck came from the distance, and the headlights from that truck started glowing on this
Mm.
fog. And so I thought to myself, I've got to capture this. This looks so good. And I
Yeah.
didn't really know how it would turn out because it would be so easy to overexpose it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of that glow. Anyway, so this is what happened. I shot this. This is a single exposure. It's a 10-second shutter speed. I think about ISO. I think it's about 1600 or thereabouts. It's not extremely high because I was
Mm.
worried about blowing out the headlights, and also it's shot at 24mm focal length.
Yeah.
And I was really happy with this. I called it Spooky Church because it
Yeah.
looks like it's haunted or
Oh,
something.
that's very
Um,
spooky. Yeah.
uh, yeah, so for a single exposure, I was very pleased that it came out as well as it did.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the trees on the right there. I mean, those things are the leaves are tack sharp on it. When on my other screen here, I'm looking at they are tack
Yeah,
sharp.
yeah, that's right. Maybe I may have shot this at f4. I can't remember, but it's not wide open. It's an f1.4 lens, but it's certainly not wide open.
Yeah.
But I am a bit back a little bit from those trees, so yeah, and it was very calm. There was no wind.
Yeah.
So often those cold winter nights, it is quite calm.
Well, you can see the kind of layering in that, Richard, like with that tree on the right, being so darker, and then the tree on the left is just a little lighter, and then you've got the house in the back. So, when I'm looking at it on the big screen here, I'm seeing 3 layers, and you've got the sky 4 in the back. So it really takes you, it's giving you that depth of field when you're looking at this image here. So,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool when you get somebody else helping you light the building up.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that was going to happen until it happened, so I had to be very quick to make sure I captured it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very cool. And here's another one with these gnarly old trees and the rocks and lots of texture.
Yes. Yeah, well, this is in Tasmania, so this was my last road trip last year down there, and I wanted to capture this tree. It's on the rocky outcrop, the ocean in the background. This is a place called the Bay of Fires, and if you've ever heard of Tasmania, you would have heard of the Bay of Fires. Okay. There's a lot of rocks there. They're beautiful rocks, and anyway, I wanted to capture this particular spot. So this is shot with a 20mm f1.8, shot at f2.8 for the background. I did a stack of 10. These are not tracked, so I didn't move the tripod. It's not on a star tracker, but I took 10 images of the background with no light painting on the front. So it's just silhouetted the foreground. Then, without moving the camera or tripod, I stopped down the aperture to f5.6, ISO 500, and did a couple. Actually, there's I think 2 or 3 exposures of the foreground, and I did one. I also did a long exposure. I think maybe maybe about a 90-second, just an ambient exposure of that foreground, because you've got to realize that although we're limited with our shutter speed with the sky because it's moving, the foreground's not moving. I can make that shutter speed whatever length I want. And so if I add extra shutter speed, I will get more detail. Doesn't matter how dark it is. Eventually there is ambient light out there at night time, and you will capture the detail in these rocks, which I have done. I had to refocus, of course, because the focus on that rock there at the beginning is obviously very close compared to the background.
I almost thought you might have shot it maybe like with a 14mm lens, because you're so close to that foreground, and
I get what you're saying. No, it's definitely a 20mm lens, this one.
No, very, very cool. And I think that was our last image, Richard.
Okay.
We went through and so wow. You've over the years you've built yourself a heck of a portfolio of astro photos. It's just fantastic.
Well, you should see I've got a room here, which I is as a gallery, I guess you'd call it. It's full of images all the way around the wall. I just don't have enough wall space. One thing I do. Well, yeah, but I print and frame a lot of my images. I've sold a lot of framed images over the years, and I still have quite a few around. And I just like to look at them. In fact, in the room I'm in here now, I'm looking at about 4 up on the wall in front of me, and it's just nice to have them in print, because a lot of photographers never print their work, and they just have them as a digital thing on Facebook or something like that, which is fine, but it's just so good to walk into a room and look up and see some of your work up there. I just think it's a special thing.
Behind me here too, like I print my photos off too, and I always say there's another friend of mine he never printed anything. He's taken lots of photos, but he's never printed. He finally got into printing. He can't stop printing now. He just loves to hold his images and constantly look at them. So he's got drawers of images being printed. So and but no, it is incredible here. So I'm just Karen was just saying it, outstanding images and information. So
thank you.
Is. Yeah, Richard, it's been fantastic chatting with you. And I've watched your videos, and I'm going to continue watching. I urge everybody else that watches this to get onto your channel and make sure they give you that thumbs up and watch those videos, because it is just fantastic. Information is really good, and you do make the complicated very simple. When you're explaining, I mean, you're a real teacher. Like I say, I just love watching your videos, and can hardly wait
Yeah.
for something new to come out.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know,
No, I appreciate that. I have a passion for what I do, and I love what I do, and I think that's the key to whatever it is that we ever do. Is to, if we're passionate about it and we love it, then that gives us enough determination and um, you know work ethic, I guess, to actually succeed in whatever we do. It's hard work. It's really difficult to shoot these images. So you've got to have something that pushes you a lot, makes you get out of bed at night time to get out there and do it.
yeah,
As,
absolutely.
as far as leading a tour to Tasmania, I absolutely love Tasmania. It is a
Yeah,
fantastic place. And I've had quite a few people who want to go there. But anyway, maybe one day, who knows? But it's a long way from Canada.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's people do travel. They go down there and Australia and so it's and I guess Karen, I think Karen's husband's from Hawaii or something, so she's partly halfway, not quite halfway, but partly there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's wonderful. And again, Richard, thank you very much for your time and sharing these wonderful images, and look forward to seeing more videos from you and having you back another time. And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And
No, that's okay, Frank. Thank you very much. And I appreciate everyone tuning in today.
yeah,
Like I said, I've got plenty of content on my YouTube channel. I've got lots of stuff there, which is about how I do the things I do. I don't have any secrets. There's a lot of free information there.
yeah,
I've got a lot of actually, I've got a lot of workshops online on my YouTube channel, so you can look those up,
yeah.
or on my website. You can find them there. So they're all very handy resources.
Well, that's the thing about photographers. We share things. There's some other hobbies and stuff. Everybody kind of holds things to their chest. As a photographer, we tend to share. We tend to help one another. Grow in this fantastic hobby. And a
Yep.
lifestyle. So it's just nice to have that.
Yeah.
In there. So, and
Yep.
Chuck was saying, thank you, Richard, for you have inspired me to get out and shooting stars. So it's and
Yeah.
Chuck's the one that was mentioned. He just got himself a Z7, so and then I think he got a 20, was it 14 millimeter? He got a lens with that also. He traded the 24-70 kit lens back and got something else. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it's gonna
Yeah.
be,
Well, that's good to hear, Chuck. I mean, one of the things that I enjoy most about what I do is to read comments like that, where people feel inspired by looking at a few images that I've taken to get out there and take some for themselves. I think that's a fantastic thing, because you know what? The world's not always a happy place, and it's good to just take time out. And one of the things you can do, and it's the same when you do landscape photography, I think, but you get out there in nature, under the stars at night time. It is absolutely beautiful out there, and you can just relax, breathe in, let the worries of the world disappear, and enjoy the time. And at the end of it, hopefully have a decent photograph to
yeah,
show for it.
yeah. No, for sure. Now, before we let you go, is there any questions that anybody has out there that you may want to ask Richard while we still have him here? And put in the comments. I know some of you can't put comments up, but the ones you can, ask away. And Richard is still here to give us an answer. If not, we're going to let him go. And he's starting his day in Australia. We're getting ready to bed. He's just getting going. Oh, Dorothy, thank you for sharing, Richard. Very interesting. Chuck, what type of lights do you use for your light painting?
Okay, well, I use a lot of different lights for my light painting, but a simple flashlight. I use a LED Lenser brand, which you would probably be familiar with, but there's a lot of different ones. But it doesn't need to be very bright. So I use a LED Lenser P7 series, and also for the low level lights, there's a million. There's literally light panels from eBay. I do have. Hang on. Here's one that I've only just not long started using. This is a Ulanzi. Can you see that?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
I'll get it in focus.
Yeah. No,
Needs to be next
I
to
can
my
see it,
face to
yeah.
be in
Now,
focus.
is it a multicolored one?
Yeah, multicolored,
Okay.
and you can make it white or colors.
Oh, okay.
So, and you can dim it right down to almost nothing.
Yeah.
So it's a very small plastic. It's quite a lightweight. You can put it in your pocket. It's a Ulanzi VL49. That's the RGB video light.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
There's quite a lot of this. This is only a small light panel. You can get larger ones, which I do have, but I can't put my finger on all of those just at the moment. But look, if you look at my YouTube channel, you'll see countless videos on the equipment that I use as well. So they're all out there.
yeah. Now, do you use before we let you go? Do you use any flash? Like when you're setting up some of the houses, do you like put flash in there, and when you take the image at the very end, the flash would go off?
Well, typically no, unless I've got people in the frame. So
Okay.
we didn't show any tonight, but I've got lots of images of portraits, if you like, under the stars, and I do use flash if I'm lighting people, because the reason for that is people move and they blur when they move in a long exposure. So
Yeah.
I use the flash to freeze the movement.
Okay. Okay. Richard, once again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and I'm glad that we had the time to spend with you. I'm just gonna see, bring something up here. There it is, and yeah, so I've got. Yeah, we still have 7 people out there. Chuck saying thank you, Richard. So we'll let you go, and I'm going to close off the stream, and it'll be back up shortly here for people to rewatch, and I look forward to chatting with you again, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate you having me on, and thank you everybody for tuning in. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was a very informative chat, and fantastic images. Thanks a lot, Richard. Yeah. Cheers.
No worries.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.